I'm gonna look up catfish verb and synonyms. Rip off, deceive, trick, cheat, string along, swindle, dupe, entrap, ensnare, take in, bamboozle, beguile, bilk, catfish, cheat on, chisel, diddle, do, do out of, double cross, ensnare, fake out, finagle, fleece, gull, jip, hoax, jerk around, lay a false trail, make a fool out of someone, make out, no, pull a fast one, pull the wool over someone's eyes, put one over on someone, ream, screw, shaft, Shanghai, which I've never fucking heard of that for that before, but whatever, spring a trap, sucker, take someone for a ride, throw someone off the scent or track, trap, try it on with someone, wangle, or wind up.
Those are how I feel. Those are all how I feel.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pale in Comparison, a proud member of the Doof Network. In this podcast, my sister uses her knowledge of the Otherverse to take a look at Pact, Wildbow's most...
deceptive, tricksy, false...
Okay, hold on. Alright, fine. Wildbow's biggest fake out, and I try to not give away any spoilers. I'm Jenny, and Malia convinced me to read Worm.
I'm Malia, and Jenny convinced me to read everything else. This episode, we are covering Null, chapters 9.1 and 9.2. Before we get into that, however, I'd like to issue a spoiler warning. This podcast is filled with pale spoilers. If you don't know how Halloween is celebrated in Thunder Bay and don't want us to tell you, stop now, read Pale, and come back to this podcast. As for Pact, there'll be full spoilers to the chapters we are covering.
All right, so this is an exciting episode for several reasons. Malia's already kind of expressed some of her emotions, but we'll get there in a minute. We'll start with that. We're starting a new arc, Null. So, Malia, before we get into all that big emotional stuff, what does Null mean?
Null means having no legal or binding force. Something has the value 0. It's nothing, right? In electronics, something about things that cancel each other out or something. And I was trying to figure out what is the difference between null and void, which is the thing you kind of hear in like legal terms. A lot of the legal terms are just redundancies that have become like the phrase that you use for things. So null and void basically mean the same thing, but null is nothing, whereas a void is a nothing that takes up space, which is kind of interesting. In terms of this arc, I'm thinking, like Blake's self is close to null. The lawyers are going to say at the end of this chapter that their offer is null. And my, yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I'll read my chapter summary and then we're going to get into what you think about all this. Yeah, we get to mark off your last prediction is incorrect in terms of the protagonist. So Blake is back. Woo! You should be more excited.
No, I am excited.
I think you're just... Well, he is stuck in a cold, dark world that is working to wear him down. He meets a mermaid-esque other who seems nice, but kind of wants to eat him. He hears his old friends and Rose, who says that she messed up her awakening on purpose. Blake is super pissed. He is exploring down there and runs into some people who are pretty cautious about him, but in the end agree to lead him past this huge sleeping monster thing. After that, Blake takes a nap and has a really creepy dream. Then he gets attacked, but he escapes. And he loses his weapon. He runs into someone super terrible from his past and runs like hell. Then he calls on the lawyers for help, but they refuse. All right, Malia, what did you think of these chapters?
Blake Thorburn has risen today. Hallelujah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, Yeah, so
Really? Okay, that is. I don't know whether to call you like a really good or really bad Catholic for that.
Well, I almost said like Blake's not dead. Woo woo, he is alive. Which is a very fun Protestant-y song. And then I was thinking I will survive, but I honestly don't have the confidence that Blake will survive.
Blake will survive, but he has survived so far.
Blake has survived.
Oh my!
Blake has survived. Yeah.
All
so
right.
A lot of my emotions are wound up in the fact that I have a podcast where there are people out there listening to like my thoughts and opinions and being like, like at my thoughts and opinions. Because if I was reading this alone over the course of, you know, a weekend where I had nothing to do and I was just blazing through the story, like I would have been like, or something, or like, ooh. But Blake not existing would only have taken up, you know, an hour of my time or whatever, maybe 2, whatever, and then I wouldn't have had to admit to anyone except for maybe you that I thought he was dead. So a lot of the like so there's a lot of feelings of just like, you know, being embarrassed, but those are all related to the fact that it's a podcast because Blake is back and I love Blake and I'm very worried again for Blake. But he's back and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I don't think you should be embarrassed. I think most people reading this went through the same thing you did. I think everyone thought he was gone forever. And then it's like he's not gone forever, but yes, you're right. But don't be embarrassed.
I mean thanks. It's just so bold to like straight up just get rid of your protagonist. And there was a moment where I was like, you know, like I didn't make it. Like part of me was like, maybe that line could mean like we don't really see him die, but also it was just a good line. And Alexis, you know, like it all was just like, yeah, he's dead or whatever. And leads me to lots of thoughts. And I feel like I still don't really know where the story is going. Like it makes sense that we're still following Blake, but it's like, why? I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk about that.
Sure, because you're like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, this is great for me. So. I love it. All right, so yay, Blake, he's still screwed. He's in the drains. And he meets Green Eyes, who is a really helpful and creepy looking mermaid. She helps him to reach the next area and gives him some tips. And he lets her kiss him as a reward. And I should also mention he agrees to let her eat him if he dies, which, I mean, that's fair, I guess.
Yeah. It reminds me of like those stories where like your pets eat you after you die in your house, no one finds you. Like, that's fair.
I mean, it doesn't really remind me of that, but I guess I could see that.
Like, it felt non-malicious.
Sure, I could see that. Yeah, it's not malicious. Just like, you know, if you're not using it, you know, I'm hungry, so
yeah. But yeah, I had so much whiplash about this perspective because immediately it was first person and I was like, oh my god, it's Blake. And then I was like, no, it's not Blake. It can't be Blake, right? Blake is gone forever. And then he starts talking about how his eye socket, whatever. And so I thought he only had one eye and I was like, Johannes! And I thought we were seeing Johannes's like domain, whatever the fuck. And then I was like, no, this doesn't seem like Johannes. Yeah, this is Blake. Okay, it's Blake. Which was a fun whiplash. Yeah. Because I mean, it made so much sense that like, okay, we just had a whole build up of Johannes and now we're gonna get an arc about him, but like, nah. Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in your next comment because where do you think we are?
Okay, I think we're in the ruins, but I guess maybe we're not. You did write drains with a capital D, but I don't know what that is.
I think that they mentioned that. I think they mentioned that in the chapters. I think Green Eyes called it the drains.
She called it this. She's like, I think of it as the sewers.
Oh, okay. I don't think that really still gives anything away. Maybe they call it drains later on. well, drain sewers, whatever. It is a part of something.
So are we not in the ruins?
I don't know. Just,
Okay, it feels like we're in the ruins
there are a lot of
it's always raining.
There's a lot of water. Sure. Makes sense.
And there's bad stuff. I mean, I guess it could also be the Abyss. We haven't been to the Abyss we saw it sort of in Edith's thing when she was getting the lantern.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it raining, but
so
Blake does talk.
What's the deal with the ruins again? What kind of place is that?
It's a spirit place.
Okay. And so I could see.
Sure. I mean, it's like where Jessica went to find her cousin, and it's raining, and it's emotional, and there's like different sectors, right? Where there's like the bad, sad sectors, and then the like angry sectors or whatever. Because like Avery's down there helping Jessica, and they run into like the incarnations. And there was like that car crash that kept happening forever or something.
Yeah.
So I guess the ruins is more of an echo-y place with echoes and incarnations, and we don't really know. These seem to be more like people who physically fell into a place. But I just figured it was the ruins.
No, I mean, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, I guess we'll see if we get a confirmation on that. Because it's kind of hard for Blake, because he's just kind of like, well, we just fell down here into, I guess, the sewers or whatever.
Sure, I mean, I think Blake can tell he's somewhere, he's in a different realm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's in a different
They talk about
realm,
places where the stuff is closer to the surface. I don't think this is the Warrens. I just picture the Warrens as like mud tunnels. And I guess this is a lot of mud tunnels. And there is a big goblin sleeping in the mud tunnels.
I mean, would it make sense for Blake to fall into the Warrens after Ur eats him or whatever?
I don't know. I mean, so like I thought it was the ruins because it sad, no connections.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's another thing that's
I'm not saying that's dumb or anything. I'm just like think it's interesting that's like.
Well, I'm thinking of all the realms I know, right? I don't think this is the spirit world.
And you said, we don't really know the Abyss very well,
right?
So yeah, from what you know, that definitely makes sense,
right?
From what you're describing.
I mean, this also makes me think, like, does this happen to everyone that Or eats? So I noticed that, like, Blake doesn't have the dead hyena corpse. I don't know if Or ate that or what, but, like, from what Blake describes, right, like, Or cuts off all of his connections, and then he, like, is kind of running and takes a couple steps backwards, and, like, cracks open up around him, and he falls into this place, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe Or just like missed this one, or maybe they all end up here, which is interesting.
Is there a place that like you can remember them talking about things falling through the cracks, or not really?
See, that just makes me think of like paths, but like no.
Can you imagine if that was like the start to a path? You had to be eaten by a demon like that. Just be like, no, trust me, it's a really sweet path. You get some great boons.
Right, it's like Avery would do it. Yeah.
Lord, I hope not.
Well, because it seems like what happens to Blake is what was going to happen to Maggie at the end of last chapter with the cracks opening up. Because they were both like, he lost so many of his, all of his connections, which like was enough for him to kind of his self to degrade, and that's what was happening with Mags. And so, I mean, that was interesting. That maybe that has something to do with why Mags remembers him. I still don't know what the timeline is in terms of her name ritual and Blake being disconnected. Now I don't know what to call it. And Or getting Blake. But if part of her was like in this space or almost in this space, because she talks about the big pit opening up, and like maybe it's the Abyss. I mean, this place is pretty bad. Maybe this is the Abyss.
I don't know. Just keep an open mind. We'll see. I mean, I could just be throwing you off by like making you think you're wrong.
I know.
But you also, I mean, we'll see. You could be wrong, could be right. I mean, obviously those are the two options. So, you know, but yeah. So yeah, we don't really know anything about the abyss, but I see what you mean. Like in terms of there's a lot of water. That's for damn sure. And
yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry to cut you off. I just thought that was interesting because they didn't mention ruins specifically, so I was just like, oh, how'd you like figure that it was the ruins?
Sure. It just also they
sense.
haven't mentioned that grandma's cat was her familiar, but like, come on.
Sure.
But yeah, so another thing is that Blake can't use the site, which seems bad. So I was trying to think of what this might mean. I mean, maybe it was just that like his eyes were frozen and not working because I don't think he's tried to do it since. Like I think he's still a practitioner, but I'm not sure. I mean, his connections were all cut off, but that presumably doesn't mean that the things he like swore don't still apply to him. But I'm not sure. I don't think Blake is forsworn at this point. Like, in the latest Pale chapter, we got a tiny little Seth perspective, and like Blake isn't literally tripping every step and stuff, you know? And like in this place, I feel like, you know, you would. And so
I mean,
he doesn't feel.
He actually kind of says in some ways it seems like it's a little bit better.
Right, the people give him the benefit of the doubt and stuff, and he's like, oh, is this because my karma's not shit anymore because I'm not the Thorburn practitioner? Fun. But I don't know if that's because he's not a practitioner or because all the connections are gone, right? So he can't be a Thorburn? I don't get it. Yeah. But yeah, so then there's his tattoos, and that's fun. I think that was the official moment where I was like, yeah, this is definitely Blake. They sound rad.
Yeah, it's like, so it's pretty fucking rad. So like how, well, I mean like, yeah, talk about the tattoos a little bit more.
So they're really, really big, dead, like petrified-ish or dying trees. But real, real big, and there's like thorns or something. And then there's no birds anymore, but there's a bunch of feathers, and one of the branches on one of the trees has a bird skull like hanging on it, like through its eye socket. And that's cool. And apparently these tattoos are like so much that people think he's like another.
Yeah.
Which is fun. So I mean, going off of the theory that these are, you know, representations of Blake's self, seems like we're very close to death. We're very close to ending, but the trees are really big, which is interesting. And I don't know what to do with it.
So like, yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. Like, and then it actually has like a crack like in
his hand, arm. Yeah. I don't remember what entry that was.
What entry?
Yeah, well, because that's where he kept the locket, right? Was like wrapped around his hand. But he seemed to be like, he started talking about how he had fixed himself up with glamour, and so his body wasn't healing because it didn't know that it had to. And I was kind of assuming that his hand being fucked up also had to do with that, but I couldn't remember.
It says in here, like, the wound on that same hand was an old one, a puncture wound I'd made to draw blood. And then there's scratches on this fingertip and stuff. Yeah. So
right.
But it's like, yeah, a yawning wound, effectively cutting my hand in half. So it's pretty fucking bad.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like, kind of, I don't know, like, big ass branches and feathers. Like, I don't know. It's like the branches crawled up my arms past my elbows, and then black and brown with branches and feathers. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty wild.
It's wild.
Wild
There's
shit.
also feels like something that you're kind of like that I should be able to put pieces together with, and I have no idea. Also, in like full disclosure or whatever, people on the Discord were like, Malia, you really don't get the rats and dogs thing. And I was like, what? And they're like, the Pied Piper. And I was like, what? So it's,
I
you
thought
can't
about
have,
that when we were talking, but I was kind of like, I don't, but like the dog, I was just like, I don't think I've ever heard of dogs being part of the Pied Pipers, you know? So, but
I also
I was just like,
didn't really know about the rat thing either. I mean, I feel like a vague memory of he did that first and then he stole all their children or something. But yeah, so it's
yeah,
just the fact that like Johannes is around and can control rats and dogs, and therefore you don't want him to control your familiar, and that's like the whole thing.
makes sense.
I'm
That would
assuming.
suck.
Right, and so he's letting dog and
Maybe.
rat spirits fill the vestiges so he can control them better, I'm assuming.
Maybe it's like how like their dog whistles. Like, because I mean, I don't think dogs were part of the. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but like, you know, I've never heard of dogs being part of the Pied Piper thing myself,
Right.
but I know there's dog whistles.
Dog
So
whistles are a
maybe it's
thing.
just like it's a 2-for-1. Maybe the Pied Piper was like, I'm gonna also be a dog trainer, and no, I don't know. I'm just bullshitting. Anyway, let's keep on moving along. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's stuff.
Right.
That was a good input for my part just then. So you're welcome.
Yeah, so big trees, feathers, I don't know. He's gonna turn him, and like fetches are made out of sticks, and that's
Do
all
you
I got.
think it's like because he described like looking at his tattoos because he was like he thought bugs were crawling like up his arm
Oh
and
yeah,
it
that
was like the
sucked.
tattoos moving like with that crack because he said there's a big ass crack. Do you think they're just tattoos or do you think like I don't know? Do you think he could be starting to turn into a tree?
No. I mean,
All right, that's fair.
I mean, they seem to be some sort of indicator about how Blake's doing, and
Sure.
but like other practitioners don't necessarily have something like this, and he didn't do it on purpose. So it might have something to do with something Grandma Rose did to deal with his reflection being taken away from him. Like glamour, you have to leave tells, and maybe she did something
Yeah.
with his tattoos to act as a reflection because he doesn't have one anymore. I don't know what to do with that. It's cool.
All right, cool. That's fine. I just really like them.
They're cool. I want to see, I mean, eventually, if people have gotten any of his tattoos as tattoos, and I want to see them.
I bet some people have. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've seen some people have that on Reddit.
Cool.
See if I can find some that are spoiler free and share with you later.
Yeah, just the like nice original watercolor bird tattoos.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Green Eyes. I really like her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so this is when we start to learn that like innocents have found their way into this place. And, you know, she was right where Blake was. Like she was there and then she fell in and then someone sort of saves her. I mean, he's not strong enough to bring her back to the surface. She mentions how she has to hold on to things to stay up there, that she can't just sort of float or whatever. So that seems plausible, I guess. And he like breathes for her, and that's nice. And then he brings her food that he eats and then regurgitates, and that's interesting. And then they have sex, and like that's cool, I guess. I mean, like the nice thing is that she was like, "Yeah, I really wanted it," and I was like, "That's good." But
Yeah.
then she talks about
That's
how
good, I
like
guess.
his skin is so rough that hers starts to like peel away, and I'm like, "Ooh, that
That's
sucks."
less nice. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and she can, you know, she admits at this point that like maybe it's sort of a Stockholm syndrome e type thing, or like a Nightingale. No, that's the opposite. But just sort of a like, presumably he saved her because he had no one else, right? Like maybe he was a similar innocent who had been, you know, found himself in this position and he wanted some companionship. Seems to be what was up. Either that or this is like that one episode of Legacies where you have to get someone to replace you to get out of the trap. don't know if you remember what I mean.
Oh,
Yeah, the video game one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I do.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like Green Eyes is just like a relatively good person who, you know, is really lonely,
Mm-hmm.
and is willing to not actively help someone who might be dangerous in order to maybe like get a companion. Because like once Blake starts talking to her, like she helps him actively, right? Like she could have fucked with his plank and knocked him in and done all this stuff,
Oh
but she
yeah.
like actively helps him. Um
Mm-hmm.
like not, just waits as she was at first. It's
Yeah.
also just fun being like, here's a sea monster thing, and he's just like hi, like, and she says hi, and I'm just like, I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that Green Eyes isn't sworn to the seal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we hear about how when new others are created, and like we see with John and stuff, that they have this like instinctive knowledge. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that they're bound to it. I don't remember the details with Tashlit because I think she didn't know she was other for a long
Yeah.
time. Um
Uh-huh.
and like Green Eyes seems to have progressed to the point where she's solidly other and should be bound to it, but I know there's like weird stuff with that, and it's interesting here that she's not. Um yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but they're talking, and Blake, we're seeing how the connections have really fucked, or the lack of connections are fucking Blake up because he almost forgets his name. He almost forget Alexis's name. He almost forgets Rose's name. And hers out of the three was the hardest to recall. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like based on the text, which is interesting. And we just had the whole thing with Maggie about holding on to connections and holding on to your name and all of these things, and so it's really good that Blake is able to uh hold on to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also thought it was kind of funny that she can remember knowing a Blake, but she can't remember her own name. Like that seems kind of wild, and like it's fun how
I
connections
know.
and memory work.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it's just funny that she says that. It's funny that she's like, you don't look anything like him. Like it's just like, okay. So much about the
Yeah,
conversation
like,
was so mundane, and like it was great.
he needs some mundane stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it seemed like both of them really needed to talk to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I liked the exchange, where she says you're supposed to fear the unknown, and Blake says, "Yeah, I used to think that too." Um I don't really know what it's trying to say, but I really like it. I don't know if you have thoughts.
I mean, I guess, I don't know, I'm like, he's had every shitty thing that could happen, so it doesn't really have that much to be scared of anymore.
Yeah. Except we're like halfway through this book.
That's true. I
Yeah.
don't think I really read, like, a ton into that, but...
Yeah, I guess, yeah, like, what is it saying about Blake or something? Because, like, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. He's just seen so much shit. It kind of reminded me, though, about how darkness represents the unknown, and, like, he's in this situation because of a darkness demon. Um, and, like, presumably he's still afraid of it, but I guess he's also faced it and is dealing with it because
Yeah.
something? I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I think it says he's still, like, kind of freaked out, but he's, like, calm. And he's just like, well, gotta keep going, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. I don't have that much to say about it, I don't think.
That's fair. Yeah, so another like thought-provoking thing in this next section that I do want to kind of talk about is like well, so these two chapters we see Blake go from, I have to keep going, I have to keep going, having something to hold on to you win, this place wins, I give up.
Mm-hmm.
And so here at the beginning, being posed with the question, haven't you ever looked at wild animals and envied them a little? Like, haven't you ever looked at things that just live in the now, kind of? I mean, bears have to eat enough to think about hibernation, and birds have to build nests, but like a simpler sort of life. And like, why doesn't Blake particularly doesn't want to like have sex with probably anyone. So Green Eyes' proposal wasn't the best for him.
Just kind of barking up the wrong tree.
Right, but like he could have asked to try to stay with those people. He could have, I don't know, there's things that, like, why doesn't he stop? Like, why doesn't he give up? But then he does. Like, it's just kind of like interesting. I don't know, it's very Blake, but being able to see like exactly what pushes Blake to his breaking point is also interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was thinking about, like, sometimes I envy my cat, right? Because she just
Mm-hmm.
like sleeps in like different places all around the apartment, and then like demands attention, and then like sleeps
Mm-hmm.
some more, and that sounds nice.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, importantly, she's not smart enough to get too bored, I don't think, so that's important. um, but when I look at like birds or whatever, like birds are just constantly trying to find food, and that seems so fucking stressful. Like their whole life is like trying to find food and try not to get eaten. And like
Mm-hmm.
that's not my whole life. And I guess it involves a lot of like dumb stressful things that shouldn't matter as much, but also I don't know. But like I guess like would I have given up and become a creepy mermaid lover, or would I have kept going? And I don't know. And what do you
Hmm.
think, Jen? I guess you have children, so you have something to like really keep going for. I mean, I have my fiance and I love him, but just sort of thinking like like Blake has his friends he really really loves, but he could just be a mermaid and they'd never know.
That's true. Well, if you're asking me if I've ever looked at wild animals or pets and envied them,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think it'd be really sweet to fly. So, in this sense, I guess
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to be like a bird, but then I also don't actually want to be, uh, eaten or killed by anything, which is a bit less likely as a human, hopefully. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, so it's on one hand, like, it's scary, dangerous to be a wild animal, but also you're kind of in a cage and trapped to some degree if you're a pet. I guess it depends on what kind of like animal you are as a pet. And if you're lucky, you might have a really big yard and you might get to go on like
Mm.
hikes or whatever if you're a dog, or I don't know. I guess if you're like a really adventurous cat. But I feel like they both would kind of suck.
Hmm.
But I mean, yeah, I've got my kids, so I pretty much do anything for those little fuckers in a loving way. I fucking love them. They're amazing and cute and wonderful little people. But I mean, I don't know. Everyone has a breaking point. So, like, if I
Mm-hmm.
got stuck there and totally lost hope, I mean, I don't know. Because, I mean, ultimately, like, would my drive to survive overtake my drive for humanity? Or would I rather die as a human? I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm not sure because I could be in so much despair from losing my kids and knowing I'm never going to see them again that I just don't want to live anymore. Um, I mean, as depressing as that answer is, that
Mm-hmm.
probably be more likely what I would do as opposed to becoming a. But then again, if I could become like an other and not have to feel that pain, as selfish as that may sound, I might choose to do that. I don't know. It's kind of impossible without having to go through it. I don't know. I'd probably try to fight for a long time to try to get back, but if I felt like it was hopeless, I'm not sure. But probably try to at least not be like evil. Probably
Yeah.
try to keep the good part at least. So if that meant dying or being prey for something as opposed to becoming evil and like preying on innocence, I'd probably die real. I mean, even if I was the type of person to decide to be evil, I probably would die real quick anyway. But because I don't think I have those super cool like Bear Grylls skills, you know.
Yeah.
How do you think he would do in the abyss? Like,
um
he probably would have a better chance
like
of surviving than most people, but
yeah, I bet, like, well, so my thing with Bear Grylls is like I don't know entirely how legit he is. So like
mm,
Bear
true.
Grylls, like, if it's all true, would do pretty okay. I mean, he'd have to know
He'd probably
something
do pretty
about
okay.
like how maybe a little bit about how the practice and stuff works so that he would know about some of the dangers. But in terms of just like, navigating all the rocks and crap.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about this place though is like the
Like it targets you specifically.
right. It targets you specifically, and no matter what you're doing, you can't find relief, right? So, like, Blake wiping
Yeah.
off the dirt means, or like the blood means he got dirt in his eye now, and there's like bugs like biting him all the time, and just like, yeah.
Yeah. But
I
I'm
don't know.
also kind of like, if he's legit, he probably is more used to being uncomfortable.
Well, that's true.
I mean, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I have 2 ideas for a discussion question so far, so this is great.
Perfect.
All right. See if I remember them.
But yeah, kind of getting toward the end of this section, Green Eyes and Blake talk about his different options. It seems like there's 2 possible ways out of this place. One is that there are areas that are closer to like the mortal world, I'm assuming, but there's usually someone there guarding it, waiting to extort people, waiting to eat people, whatever. And then the other way out is to get bound by a practitioner and get taken away as a slave. So, that's fun. But realizing like, oh, practitioners come down here and get others is a very small hope. I thought that Rose was in this place and had come down here to get shit when I was reading really fast. I did, and then realized that Blake was overhearing a conversation. But yeah, that at this point I'm not sure which one he's going to take, but it seems like maybe the witch can help him out. I don't know. I'm wondering who that is. But yeah.
All right. Blake overhears Evan, Rose, and the rest of his friends talking. He hears Rose state that, though she's unsure of why, she messed up her awakening ritual on purpose.
Yeah. This hurts so bad. Yeah, so one thing is like Evan is so fun and lovely and wonderful. And I'm just so afraid. I still don't want to hate Rose, but she seems to have like deeply betrayed Blake in this moment. Especially because I sort of remember that during the awakening stuff, she was insisting that she also do the ritual. Like I don't think Blake was like would have been like, "Oh, why aren't you doing it?" or what. Like I think she was really insisting on it. So she just fucking didn't have to, but yeah, the whole she wanted to be able to lie to me, that sucks. It's also interesting that because I've been thinking about, Rose was appointed as heir in her timeline immediately. There was no Molly. And so something people probably thought was maybe Rose had done the awakening ritual already. So when she did it with Blake, it was like, it didn't count because she'd already done it before. Here we learn like that's definitely not true. But yeah, like when she's like, we gotta go do the rituals, I was like, oh, you have like a familiar and an implement and a domain all picked out, like that's fast, but okay, I guess like might as well do it. I mean, she does use a plural, so I'm wondering if they are going to do one of those rituals anyway. Evan is here and patched up and fine, and so I'm wondering how that's going to work. Or like, if they need to do a familiar ritual or whatever with him, like I had thought maybe. But yeah, oh god. And then one thing that was funny was Rose was like, I was never big on trusting my gut, but I guess it worked. And I'm just like, god damn it, Rose. Like, she gave Blake shit about his instincts for, a month or however long they were together. And then she's like, oh, instincts. I'm like, god damn it. But yeah, I wonder exactly like what exactly she did to mess up her awakening ritual. I mean, the holly would be the obvious thought for pact readers because it was different, but the Kenneteers used holly and it was fine. And so I don't think that was it. I'm wondering like if she didn't draw it right or didn't, I don't know. It's interesting how she remembers. I mean, she could be lying to all of them now about what she remembers because she's not awoken, but it's interesting how she remembers some things. They all remember some things and not others, right? Like, she knows she messed up the ritual, but she doesn't know why. Yeah. But yeah, it just really hurts because I really want to love Rose. I really liked Rose, and I feel betrayed by Rose in a personal way. Yeah.
I have a couple questions for you.
Fun.
I don't know if it'll make you feel better or not.
Okay.
So are we sure that Rose couldn't lie? Or like could lie? Like have we had anyone else say that, oh, she can't lie, or anything that's like alluding to that?
Yeah, I mean, there was the thing with Ms. Lewis telling her, because they were sort of like, we are not even sure if the awakening worked or something, and she was like, well, you're connected to Blake, so you still shouldn't lie. Like, I'm wondering, like, is that because she's an other? Is that because she's connected to Blake so strongly? And so I do think that there was that potential risk of her lying would hurt Blake's power. So like, I'm not certain why she fucked up the awakening ritual. I think we'll learn why. I'm not sure that it necessarily has to do with lying. But I also, the fact that she pretended to go through with it to deceive Blake is hurtful.
Okay. My next question. And this is something that people were talking to after this chapter came out. So,
oh, fun.
How certain are you that she fucked her ritual up on purpose? I know that sounds like
I don't know, I feel pretty certain she said it. I mean, so
why does she think that? Like, in her perspective, like, she doesn't remember anything, right?
Well, let me
she
go
just
back
knows
and read it.
she's.
I mean, I do think that this place picked this conversation to overhear, like, out of context and to make Blake feel really shitty. But
sure, and I think Rose. I'm not saying that. I'm not really saying anything one way or the other, but I'm just saying Rose believes this because of the context of what she knows, because it makes sense, the most sense for her to have fucked up, but she probably doesn't remember that she was a vestige, right?
Right. I mean, okay, so she's heard the quote, the last thing at the end of the thing is, there was a reason for it, had to be, and I'm sure we'll find the clues here given time to look. All I know is I fucked up my awakening ritual on purpose last time around. This time, right here, right now, I'm gonna do it right. And I mean, in this moment, right? I mean, presumably all of Blake's connections to everything are cut, so there's no longer a connection between him and Rose and whatever. So presumably, she doesn't have to tell the truth here, but she seems fairly confident, right? But she seems fairly confident that she did this on purpose last time,
but
not just that it didn't work.
Yes, but
on purpose, yeah.
And because in her head, she's probably like, I'm a perfectly functional,
competent
human being. I'm smart. I am capable as this human being of performing this ritual properly. And so there's no way I would have made a mistake as my human wonderful self. And so I must have fucked up on purpose because that's the only way that makes sense to me. I mean, that still could be the case, but I'm just saying, like, it could just be she doesn't remember everything. It could just be maybe as an other she couldn't do the awakening
actually awaken, yeah.
properly.
Yeah, I just feel like, I mean, maybe Rose is that confident or feels like she has to show that much confidence, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like she'd say, like, I fucked up my awakening ritual last time around, or like it didn't work last time, or something. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
I
Okay.
I am hoping that you're right. Um, but that note that she left to herself, where she was like, "I'm not going to tell you anything because it's better if we don't know," and her thinking like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I'm such a bitch." Like, I think Rose might have it in her to do this. I don't think she wanted to like Blake, and I think she did, but yeah.
Okay. Just she may not have had the ability to lie anyway, but maybe she did. Maybe. It's
Right.
just something to.
I'm not sure that I definitely agree with Blake that the being able to lie was the reason she would have fucked up her ritual
Mm-hmm.
on purpose. I think it
Mm-hmm.
could have something to do with instructions from Grandma Rose about the way the vestige thing would work, the way that like becoming the new Thorburn would work, something maybe about if she also, like it would just fuck things up somehow. Um her wanting
Sure.
that extra layer of protection, um and thinking that maybe she couldn't do much from inside the mirror world anyway. But it's still, it's yeah, it's the on purpose that really hurts. um
Mm-hmm.
and
No,
the
it
not telling
hurts.
Blake. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If that happened. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely the exact right thing for Blake to hear to really piss him off. And so
Yeah.
Blake is understandably very angry, but he still keeps going anyway. He runs into a group of people who seem pretty hostile to him at first, but he shows he isn't a threat, so they chill out for the most part. Kind of non-verbally, they let him know there's a big fucking monster, like, sleeping right there, so he has to be quiet. But they agree to have someone lead him on a safe path past the monster. And the guide ends up telling him about the witch that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this was cool. I I mean it's horrifying, seeing how many people are in this place. But it's nice to find a community of people who want to care for each other. Um I liked the gesturing and miming and like, there's a monster, like you'll die and we'll die, and that was really fun. Um I liked, yeah, the guy leading him. That was neat. And then we see, like, that would be a really good cinematic moment of like the camera moving up over the two of them while they're on this like planky
Mm-hmm.
bridge thing and like looking down into a pit with a big, monster in it. That's fun. Um
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so this was just, I don't know, like this part helped me feel hope, kind of, like these people find enough reason to keep trying, um because of the people that they're with. And I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then this guy, we get more talk about options. Um so you can hunker down and wait for something to get you. You can wander until something gets you. You can get yourself, or as Blake mentioned, you can get others. Um and the guy, you know, basically is like, "Well, I'll kill you if that's your plan." And Blake's like, "No, I don't think I
Mm-hmm.
could." And then immediately,
Yeah.
we go into the stream where he's just like, "Oh yeah, I did it." Which was interesting. Um
Yeah.
and it doesn't seem like Blake to do that. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, so this community gives me some hope, even though there's a good chance they'll all die horribly. The witch gives me hope. Um, and I love that bit at the end where he says, whatever's keeping you going, hold on to it. And I'm not entirely sure what it is for Blake. I guess his friends. But I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I guess, well, tell me about the dream a little bit more. Like, because it's creepy. But it seems
Yes.
like, I mean, it does, like, have some benefits in terms of his losing his, like, some of his fears. And for being a monster, he's, like, kind of a nice monster. He only kills the ones that, like, attack him, and he lets the innocent people go who ask for help or, don't try to be threatening. Um, so at least as a monster, he's still kind of a nice one. Um, and he's like BFFs with Green Eyes, and then he can't talk
Yeah.
anymore. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, that's interesting. Giving that part up. And the wings are really cool, right? Like, it's funny that he was like bat wings, and as I was thinking, like, oh, that's a bummer. Blake's like, kind of a bummer, but like, because they're not bird wings, and I liked that a
Yeah.
lot. I think Wabo tends to fool me with the dreams, and I think with this one he did for a bit. The
He's good about
because
that. He's
I
sneaky.
started to wonder, like, oh, okay, when he gets back up to the surface, he'll just have these huge fucking wings now, and like, that's rad, but how are we gonna deal with that? And like, yeah, by the end of it, I had figured out what it was, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's still a little bit of Blake, right? There's still he's not just going around striking fear into everyone's hearts, murdering everyone, but he is still killing and eating people who presumably are kind of like him.
Yeah.
And he has decided to give up things that make him human so that he can survive and suffer less, right? Like, that's what this place wants you to do. Is either be food for things that are willing to become monstrous or to, become monstrous. I wonder, like, 1-to-1 what all the things he gave up in exchange for what he got were, like the voice and the wings and whatnot. But yeah, I think one thing that's fun is I described it as he then decides to go let Green Eyes fuck, marry, kill him.
Yeah.
It's all three. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because he's thinking about how, okay, I'm gonna get strong enough, and so that this time I can get past the dudes and I can get out to the surface and blah 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 blah. It's like how he's thinking about it. But then he like goes to Green Eyes and she's like, soon, and he's like, yeah. Like, he knows that he's not getting out. He knows that he's gonna give up and give in. He's already given up a lot of his, like, the things that made him hate being touched and things. A lot of what makes Blake at this point. And yeah, it was kind of a depressing thought. I don't want him to be like a monster who kills people, but also if he's just like another and he just, like, I don't know, has a mermaid girlfriend and he hangs out, it's not that bad.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, could be
but
worse.
It could be worse. It doesn't line up with what Blake wants, and it isn't the most satisfying end to this story. So, as a reader and as someone who knows and understands Blake, I can see why he would find this distressing, that he would give in and give up, which is not something that Blake does.
Yeah, he can't do it. Let me see here. So, Blake, well, he goes to sleep and has that creepy dream. But then he wakes up, gets attacked by something really creepy. Before that, he hears Alexis crying, which kind of puts him off balance a bit. Because he decides he needs to keep on going. Then he gets attacked by this monster, fights back, escapes, uses his really meager plank weapon. Then he is met by someone really fucking awful that he used to know and frantically runs away.
Yeah, I don't understand what's up with this bridge thing. It felt very the monster in the lake outside the mines of Moria, like tentacles, water dragging you in. But not quite sure what to do with that other than like, oh fuck, this is scary. The overhearing Alexis and Tiffany was really interesting. It's upsetting to me that Alexis hasn't figured out why she keeps crying. That, like,
yeah,
I mean, because again, I'm thinking, oh, they can figure out they lost someone, right? And presumably should be able to put together the person who we lost at the factory was someone that I really cared about.
Yeah.
But she doesn't quite seem to have pieced that together necessarily. And Tiffany's like, yeah, you need to get some sleep because things are getting ugly out there. And I'm like, that's a bad sentence.
Yeah.
Having confirmed, right, that they're in Jacob's Bell and Hillsglade House, the Thorburn cabal is at war with the town, ? Or just Rose is evil and making the three of them's lives suck. But it kind of sounds like has something to do with the town's practitioners. At all. But yeah, and then Blake feels bad for not leaving the world a better place for Alexis, and I'm like, bitch, you made the world a better place for Alexis, but then you died, and therefore the fact that you're not around anymore is sad. You did awaken all your friends and then leave them with your evil twin, but that's all on you. But other than that, if she had never been awakened and you had just died, she would have been this upset, you know? This isn't I made her life worse. Except for, again, awakening her and leaving her with her evil twin.
Yeah. Awakening her and leaving her with the diabolist who has less of a conscience, possibly. So,
and not as much affection or feeling or connection to your friends.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of blows.
Yeah.
I guess at least his friends have each other.
Yeah.
I guess.
I hope so. But yeah, so the question again throughout this series is what is keeping Blake going? He thinks about how he wants to help Evan. He wants to repay his debts because Blake is a Lannister. He wants to see his friends. He wants to ride his bike, and he wants to kill Ur, which is fun. And Blake not being dead means that almost certainly Ur is coming back into this story, which is exciting. There's a prediction right there. Yeah. But yeah, we see, first there was the nice mermaid chick, and then there were the silent people who didn't want to die horribly, and then there's just the tentacle monster, and then there's Carl. The text made it seem like I was supposed to know who this was, and I kept thinking it was Laird, and I was like, why is Laird here?
Yeah.
And I was excited, and then it wasn't Laird. I'm assuming that this is the person who raped Blake. I'm not sure who else would have gotten this much of a reaction, but I mean, I might be wrong. He it's interesting that he and Blake, I mean, again, if this is the person who raped him, this is his, he knows him. It wasn't just a random attack. And that's painful. And I mean, otherwise opens up a bunch of questions, and I'm wondering where we're going with this. Yeah. Seems like he sucks. And he thinks that he didn't do anything wrong.
Sure. Yeah, he seems really chill for chasing after Blake. Really yeah. He seems really too chill.
Yeah.
So, finally being desperate enough, Blake finally calls upon the lawyers, and they refuse to help, saying that it's too late.
Yeah, so he's on another bridge because this place loves bridges, and he almost falls, and he fucks up his arm, preventing himself from falling, and he calls the lawyers, and this was on the one hand super great, and on the other hand I was like, this isn't gonna help.
No.
But yeah, he says, you win, this place wins, let me help my friends, and you can have me after that. And that's so sad. Because again, these two chapters have been Blake is not giving up. And I mean, in a way, this is Blake giving up, but it's not entirely. I mean, he's this is my only option to help my friends that I can see, and thus I'll do it. I think that's the thing pushing him. But yeah, and then they're too late. And I'm wondering if it's just one of them or all three of them or what's happening here. I'm excited for next chapter. And then I wanted to do a analysis of contracts. And I have been going back and forth on it, but do you want to talk about contracts law, Jenny?
I would fucking love to talk about contracts law, Malia.
Okay, so this is what my bar studying is good for.
We haven't had enough legal shit for a while, so.
And the lawyers are back. So at first I was like, no, it's not too late, and this is bullshit. However, I'm starting to think that it was somewhat, not that it was too late, but that it kind of was. Okay, here's the problem. Well, so caveat number one for this conversation is we're assuming that this is a legally enforceable contract. In the real world, making a contract to do an illegal act is a unenforceable contract. Right? It becomes void. So you can't go to court and say, like, I killed this dude for this person and now they won't pay me $20,000 or whatever. Like, that doesn't work. Even if it fits the other ideas of what a contract is. So in this case, I think the problem comes down to, like, what was the offer, right? So in a contract for services in the US, you're under the common law. And the common law says that offer and acceptance have to match perfectly. It's called the mirror image rule. They have to match, right? And so I was thinking, what was the offer? And I think the offer was, come work for us and we will free you of your karmic debt, right? And that fulfills consideration, which we don't have to get into at this point, but it's one of the other pieces that are very important as to making a contract, right? But so the thing is that the offeror is what they call the master of the offer, so they can dictate terms and various things about the offer. And the mirror image rule says that the acceptance has to match exactly, right? You can't add things, you can't tweak things, because that's not an acceptance, that's a counteroffer. And a counteroffer serves... Well, okay, I'll get there in a second. So offers exist, right? And putting an offer out there is like opening yourself up to a willingness for the other person to make the contract binding. And an acceptance is like manifesting a willingness, I guess, like manifesting agreement that you are bound by the terms of the contract.
Okay.
And so offers exist for a reasonable period of time, but they can be ended by rejection, right? So if you say no, the offer is dead. If you say, if the other person can be like, just kidding, I don't want to do this anymore, like the offeror, the end of the offer is dead. It can lapse, right, if there's too much time. And that's where I like came into this thinking, oh, there wasn't too much time, this is bullshit. And you didn't revoke the offer before Blake accepted it. You have to communicate a revocation, or the offeree has to find out other information that would lead them to believe that you would revoke the offer, right? So if I'm like, hey, Johnny, I'll sell you my house for 20,000 whatever, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool,
fuck yeah. I'll take it.
whatever. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'll think about it, right? And then and then you hear from, Bob, that Bob just bought my house, then that's effectively revoking my offer because you've learned information that would lead you to believe that the offer isn't available anymore. So none of those things have happened to Blake, right? It's lapse is usually like an unreasonable amount of time has passed. But like they haven't told him the deal's off. It's been like 3 days since Miss Lewis talked to him about it. So there's that like, Blake, you better do it soon, or we're gonna think that you're never gonna do it and it's gonna get bad. Like, so also if the subject matter of the contract dies, right, like if my house like burns down, that extinguishes the offer. If the offeror dies, that extinguishes the offer. None of them died. And then sometimes like natural disasters or weird things can have effects, but like they have to be like, well, that's sort of for whether you're excused from the terms of the contract. Anyway.
Okay.
This is all I've been doing in bar prep recently, so I'm just like, offer and acceptance. So the thing is, I don't think that it was too late. The problem is that I think that Blake's acceptance was actually a counteroffer because it did not perfectly match up as a mirror image. And so a counteroffer effectively is a rejection and a new offer. So Blake quashes their offer by saying, like,
not exactly what they said, basically.
Right, because the thing he sort of adds, like, let me help my friends, right? Which wasn't part of the deal. Because I was about to go on a whole thing about how the offer didn't lapse and they're now in a binding enforceable contract, but I think that was extinguished by Blake's counteroffer, and now it's dead.
Oh no, Blake!
So
no, Blake.
yeah.
Okay.
The mirror image rule is a bitch.
That's rough. That's fucking rough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. That's pretty interesting. Good to know. So I guess you guys talking to lawyers and stuff, make sure you don't submit a counteroffer by accident.
Yeah, I mean, they could have
whenever that's applicable.
revived their offer, but yeah. Anyway.
But they're being kind of dicks.
Yeah, they don't want to anymore.
So,
yeah.
They don't want to anymore. And like, this guy's like, in the fucking, like, he just almost fell off a bridge. He's not doing too hot. He's got like a crack in his hand, and
we're not even sure if he can practice, right?
Wild.
Like, presumably they want the Thorburn practitioner. They don't want like this dude who can't use the site. Like, I don't know.
I guess we'll see. All right. Well, we're coming to our pale in comparison section. I figured we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I figured that we'd compare this place to some of the realms in Pale. Obviously, the ruins, and I think just for fun, we could try to compare it to what we know of the Abyss as well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the ruins because it's raining, and it's depressing.
Raining and depressing.
And it's not like the ruins because it seems like there's real actual people here and not just a bunch of echoes and shit.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Do
you think it could just be like a different aspect of the ruins, or we just don't know yet?
We just don't know.
Okay.
And then the Abyss, I remember a pit and bad stuff and darkness. And I guess this is dark. Okay. And there's pits everywhere. There's lots of bridges.
Yeah.
I think that like a realm that is designed to personally tear people down until they become monsters or, you know, die or whatever feels like hell. So this could be the Abyss. I don't
know. Okay.
Yeah.
I may have to say that because I mentioned the Abyss, but if that's what you think, well, I mean, we'll see.
I don't know.
Possibly see. All right, cool. All right, this part's fun. Malia, are you ready to make a bold and specific prediction?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, so it's weird because the whole world is open back up, right? Like, will Blake get an implement? Like, will Blake, like, do a thing? Like, it's all... The world is an oyster again, and it's Blake's.
Mm-hmm.
I think that...
really watery, creepy oyster.
Yeah, like all oysters are.
I guess so. I guess so. It's a good point.
Yeah, so I feel like I have a bold and specific prediction, but not one that I'm like completely bought into. But like I was in a period of feeling really upset a couple days ago about this book. And so I guess I'll just sort of say it. Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
So a bold and specific prediction is that Rose will forswear Blake.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's pretty bold. Yeah,
because I
write that shit down.
I still think that someone is going to be forsworn in the story. I still kind of have an inkling that maybe it'll be Ty. But I think really experiencing how a forsworn person lives and exists in the world would be interesting. There's a potential that like maybe Ty, Tiffany, and Alexis would try to help Blake after seeing this happen, and provide him with like, you know, the barest forms of protection. It's hard because like where do we like I think that won't happen very soon. Because having a forsworn protagonist really impacts their ability to function. But I could see her doing it.
What do you think she would forswear him over exactly? Not sure yet.
No, I mean she could probably forswear him about Laird. that's just sitting out there waiting for anyone. Um,
True.
I don't remember if there's any big promises that he made to her that he like definitely broke. But yeah, I mean, hopefully not. But I
Do-
see this story as like possibly leading toward like Rose and Blake showdown. Because there's still
okay.
the lordship contest and all of that stuff, and maybe it will be like now Rose and Blake have to like work together as unlikely allies. But if Blake isn't tied to the house and tied to the demons and tied to all that shit, I don't know why he wouldn't just be like, "Hey, we're leaving, bye." I mean, he does like helping people, and he wants to
True.
prevent this shit from being passed on through the Fourth Thorburn family, I think. So, I don't
True.
know.
Do you think that like how do you think his loss of connection has affected things like his promises and things?
Well, yeah, maybe he can't. Fuck. So, like, we saw with Megs that her losing her name led to weird shit happening where she got the ability to swear back, but um I think the like blood and darkness thing is still following her. I think the like she was still able to practice, but she was losing it because she had used her name, I think, in the ceremony. Um but Blake is still Blake. Um
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if it's like his name that would need to be worried. I guess it's just like how much do the spirits know and remember? Because they are really dumb. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but they also remember shit. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just figured I'd ask. All right, so we actually have a listener question this week, which is fun.
Woo.
And if you guys have questions, just as a reminder, feel free to ask us questions, and every now and then we'll see if we can slide it into an
Yeah.
episode. This week's comes from Kippos. She asks, "What themes do you think Pact is tangling with, and what are the big questions that are being asked?"
Yeah, Kibos, I wish you had asked me this last week because I didn't think Blake was coming back, and now I don't know what's going on with the story. I was starting to be like, okay, it's gonna be all about the lordship thing, and we're gonna, but now I'm like, I don't know. But like thinking a little bit about it, there are two big ones that kind of stand out. Um, like, do you go with the world the way it is, or do you try to change it? Um, and I guess one of the biggest, like, two of the people I see who embody this are Grandma Rose, who wants to shake everything up, and Isadora, who wants everything to stay exactly the fucking same. um, and neither of these women seem like particularly good or particularly evil. I don't fully understand their reasons for doing things. I mean, Isadora, it seems a little bit more tied into her intrinsic nature. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
so it could be a self-preservation-y type thing, but also like people who hold up bad institutions and cycles of power or whatever are benefiting from that and preventing their own downfall or whatever. So it's not necessarily an excuse that Isadora sucks. Um
Yeah.
and then another big theme seems to be, do you keep fighting or do you give in? And the two biggest people that seem to embody this theme or question is Mags and Blake, right? We see at the end of
Yeah.
last arc how Mags is like, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't stop fighting. And that really pushes her through that arc to not take an easy road. Um, and Blake forever, but especially in this section where, he's not connected to any of these things anymore. He's not forced to be the Thorburn heir where everyone's trying to kill him. He's free, but
Mm-hmm.
he's choosing to keep going um, for his friends to repay his debts, etc. I can't really think of someone who necessarily embodies like totally giving up. Because yeah, those characters are not as interesting, I guess. But yeah, those seem to be like big structural change of the universe, and also like why keep going or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
I like those, Malia. I think I think I like and I agree with those answers. which it sounds like a cop-out, but I actually do really like your answers. All right. We're going to go over last week's discussion question, which we only had a couple answers. I'm still not going to read them in their total entirety because one of them, at least, it's really great, but it's really, really long. So if you want to take a look at everything they said, take a look at our Reddit post from last week. But our previous discussion question was, think of an object from a fairy tale or popular culture. How would that work as an implement? And would you take it as an implement? Propaganda Pagoda, they say Abraham Lincoln's stovepipe hat, which is pretty cool. I don't think
That's
I would have
awesome.
thought of that. So apparently, they're saying a hat in this case is ornamental, like Lucy's implement, and the magic items Raquel favors. They're saying they imagine it would have an effect based on the ways in which Lincoln was already exceptional, much like how Lucy was already a phenomenal eavesdropper before taking an implement. So it's declarative. As America, we don't tend to wear hats too much, except for maybe some baseball caps. They say scullies, and in Texas, some cowboy cosplay, which is a really weird way to say that. I'm going to tell you, it ain't cosplay, people. We've got some legit cowboys over here, and people like our cowboy hats.
Yeah, one thing I want to note about that I think is funny is I saw more cowboy hats in Montana and Wyoming and like Yellowstone than I do in Texas. And I do live in Austin, which is very liberal.
You do live
or
in
whatever.
Austin.
Like I live in a city, but I thought that was really funny.
I can
like,
see that.
There
I mean,
were a lot.
I feel like I see like a good amount of cowboy hats.
Okay.
Where I'm at, I think. But I mean, for working in a hospital, at least we have our patients come in, or family members come in with them sometimes.
Oh, cool.
But they say it's authoritative because a hat can be put on and taken off. So it implies you can don and doff your magic. You can put it away sometimes. And mentioned socioculturally, it's not a shield from weather or shade from sun, simply just style. On Lincoln, who was already essentially a giant, it was a bit of a hat on a hat in that way. Apparently, they, like Propaganda Pagoda, is really fucking tall like Lincoln. So, so it sits over me, increases my already large profile, assert a particular style associated with the claim of power and belonging in upper echelons of power. And then they say, I'd use it, I guess, but it wouldn't be good for practice so much as for practical human networking and presiding over some group. I mean, yeah, let's be honest, like, okay, if you had, like, literally anyone just wear that hat and was like, yeah, this was Abraham Lincoln's, that would definitely help you network. And also it'd be like, how the fuck did you get that? Why is that not in a museum?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you
maybe
steal
he had a
that?
couple, but yeah.
Maybe that's maybe it's his backup hat, which would be kind of funny.
Yes.
Like, how many hats do you think Abraham Lincoln had?
I mean, presumably they'd like wear out or whatever, and you'd have to replace it. So
true. I'm like, did he have like one hat that he wore until it got replaced, or did he have like his like Tuesday happy day hat? His like out on the town hat, his like chilling in the office hat, you know? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we could probably figure, like, someone probably knows, and that's fun.
Someone probably knows that. That's true.
But yeah, next is Captain Rhino, who says that they would take, I'm assuming they say they'd take it, I haven't got to that part, but Baby Bear's porridge bowl, which is so delightful, and I love it. This plain ceramic bowl allows the owner to create plain and simple recipes of outstanding quality, ones that are just right. So mundane applications for cooking, but also could be used for simple alchemy recipes and similar types of practice. One unusual side effect of the bowl is that it attracts innocents, practitioners, and others to violate the laws of hospitality. It enables them to bypass mundane and magical defenses, including those of a domain. Wow, that's strong. In order to steal and consume whatever items the bowl is currently holding. So if you are the owner of this bowl, you could use it to set traps for specific individuals, and leaving it in the bowl unattended so that they can sneak their way into your domain and then be trapped, I guess, which is
I
super
love
fun.
this.
Yes.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I would like that would be amazing.
It's really delightful.
I want that bowl. Maybe I would get my like fucking son to eat something other than just like Cheetos and goldfish.
Yeah, I mean,
which don't
possibly.
judge my parenting. He's eating, okay? He's eating, and I will get him to eat vegetables someday. But this bowl would probably help me. That sounds amazing. And we had one Discord mention. David Hunt on Discord mentioned the goose that lays the golden egg as a familiar. Didn't go into it, but that does sound cool. Or you could even say just the golden egg as an implement. Although, who knows what you'd use that for exactly. Probably some people right now who are more creative than me. But, I mean...
That feels like a Fabergé egg type thing, yeah.
It does. It really does.
Anyway.
I mean, if we spend some time, we could probably think on it. But that's your guys' job, because you're listening. So... Thank you for your answers. I appreciate it, guys. This week's discussion question, I had one involving Bear Grylls, but I completely forgot it, and I'm really annoyed because I feel like it was really good, but I can't remember it anymore. First, do you like this one, Malia?
I do.
Okay, great. So, if you had to get a tattoo that you knew would change like Blake's, like depending on, I guess, the state of your soul or your mood or whatever, what tattoo would you get and how would it change? I think that's kind of a cool thought.
Yeah, and I feel like it has, well, maybe it doesn't have to be somewhere where other people can see it, but specify where you'd put it as well.
Sorry, I shouldn't think that's so funny, but yeah, I mean, I guess if you have some inappropriately placed tattoos, depending on your mood, that's kind of weird, but I don't know how.
Like, if you're like, I want to hide
that.
this, I mean, I don't know, because Blake's are right there, people see them all the time, but you can put it on your, your back or whatever, where you can cover it relatively easily,
that's what you were
unless
saying.
You're really fucked. Yeah. I mean, sure, you can get on your butt, and that'd be fun.
Yeah, get it on your butt. You can get a dick tattoo if you want. I mean, I don't know if I'd want that. I mean, well, hey, you can do whatever you want. It's probably a questionable choice, especially if it's changing. But you know what? You do whatever you want. Maybe don't be super explicit about it, but we definitely want to hear.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what I would get. I have to think about that a bit, but I'm very indecisive. I don't have any tattoos. Mm-hmm. I've never dyed my hair yet either. Partially because I am indecisive, and yeah, I figure I probably should try to dye my hair before I get a tattoo. But
it's less permanent.
It's less permanent, and but I do have some ideas for some cool tattoos potentially. But
I'm open to tattoos. I'm a little afraid of the pain or whatever, and I'm just worried that like it would have something slightly wrong with it, or like I would kind of not like it anymore or whatever, or I'd be like, oh, that thing that I thought was super cool, like that was kind of dumb. I don't know, but I guess maybe someday.
That's have to do our research. Maybe someday. Because I mean, I feel like a packed tattoo could be really fucking cool.
I know.
I told you my idea for one that I'm not saying on this because I don't know why, but I'm just not going to say it. Do you have an idea for a tattoo that you could get that would be an indicator?
Oh, interesting.
I don't, so that's fine.
I mean, I wouldn't want this, but I remember thinking about Blake getting a mercury thermometer tattoo to measure his karma.
Oh, that's right.
That'd be a pretty solid indicator.
That on the podcast or not, but
I think
that'd be pretty solid. I mean, that's like really on the fucking nose. When it's really bad, the thermometer is just broken and like the mercury's spilling out.
Yeah,
like
one that could be really cool, although I don't know if this is like culturally appropriative or whatever, but like a mandala, I never say that word out loud, one of those like really intricate pretty designs. And maybe it could change in like color and
cool.
like more pointy or more round or like bread or like that could be cool.
Just change color. Yeah, that could be pretty neat.
Yeah, like maybe not as helpful in terms of like being able to analyze it or whatever, decipher it.
Well, it could maybe,
but I don't know.
Could probably make it look creepy, which I've never seen a creepy one, but I mean,
yeah, they're very satisfying.
They are, but maybe like that's the point if it gets like unsatisfying.
Oh God, that drives me nuts.
Yeah, maybe you wouldn't want to get that after all. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a rating and review. To support our podcast, go to patreon.com/doofmedia. And if you'd like to help support Wildbow as he continues to write fantastic stories, go to patreon.com/wildbow. Also have another request this week. I'm sure many of you have heard of the tragic shooting in Uvalde, Texas at the elementary school. Me and Malia both live in Texas. And I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of terrible. No matter where you live, you're living. Yeah. But we thought it would be appropriate just to mention, they have GoFundMes for many of the victims of this tragedy. And we're going to go ahead and post a link just for basically there's a page that has the various GoFundMes that you can donate to that are verified by GoFundMe. And if any of you can donate, it would be really much appreciated. And I think it's probably too long of a URL for me to read out loud, but we're going to post it. Otherwise, if y'all Google GoFundMe Texas shooting victims, it's the first link. And totally understandable if you can't afford to donate any money, but if you can, it would be really, really great.
Yeah, another thing, if you live in the United States, you can write to your congressman. I think non-citizens are technically counted as being constituents. And I'll post a link to something, probably ResistBot, that allows you to identify who your congresspeople are more easily and kind of send an automatic message. It's something small, but maybe something helpful if enough constituents talk about how this is a problem.
This is obviously a big problem that we need to do something about. So hopefully, hopefully some of those measures can start helping make this country and this world a little bit better.
But you can follow the pod on Twitter at Pale Comparison, or send us an email at paleincomparisonpod@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for our Reddit thread in r/parahumans, where you can answer our discussion question and share your thoughts on this episode. In addition, if you would like to see all of my predictions laid out, check out our episode description for a link to a prediction tracker. I have to go in and delete a bunch of the no's, which is exciting because Blake is back.
Blake is back.
Next episode, we will be covering chapters 9.3 and 9.4.
All right, we've got an Australian fun fact this week. Australia is wider than the moon, which is kind of wild. Apparently the moon is
WIDER.
Yes, DER. I'm sorry, I can't enunciate very well.
No, it's
wider. So the moon is about 3,400 kilometers in diameter, and Australia is not quite, but I think almost 4,000 kilometers in diameter. So that's pretty wild. Cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, got nothing to say about that except, that's pretty fucking big. So, cool.
It's pretty big. And the moon's pretty small. Big. I don't know, both.
I mean, the moon's still kind of big, but... I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. All right. Have a good week, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Blake's back. Blake's back. Blake's back.